ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Mock Draft Friday. Yes, we got ourselves another mock draft for you here today. Sticking with the scenario theme, we got another one here today. So before we get started, if you guys could do me a favor and hit the like button, that'd be greatly appreciated, as well as subscribing and hitting that notification bell as well. The reason I ask every single go around and inform you is because over 78.8% of you guys watching are not subscribed, and a lot of you are returning viewers. So if you like what you're seeing and you want to stick around, by all means, hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell as well. So as we've talked about throughout the week, we have to think about possibilities that could happen with all these picks, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. And this is going to be one of the more interesting scenarios because it's not the conventional defensive lineman or offensive lineman in that first round, and I think you guys might get a kick out of it. So tell me down below, is there any wild card scenarios that you think could play out that you would like the Cowboys to take advantage of? Tell me down below. And with that being said, let's dive into this Mock Draft Friday.
With the 26th pick, the Dallas Cowboys select
Josh Downs, wide receiver, North Carolina. This would be a very weird pick, to say the least. Not that I'm saying it's a bad one, but because of all the conversations we've had, the Cowboys going after a lineman, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, a cornerback, you name it. The Cowboys taking a wide receiver here, for some would be like, what are we doing? And others would be very excited. So the question now becomes, why would the Cowboys take a wide receiver at 26? What is the justification? Well, the way I look at it is this. CeeDee Lamb is coming up for a payday, and you look at the other receivers on roster. You do have Brandon Cooks, you have Michael Gallup, and I think that you taking Joshua Downs gives you the next step outside of Cooks or Gallup, depending on how those guys progress. With Cooks, it looks like he still has some gas left in the tank, and odds are he can last for a little bit longer, maybe another 2 to 4 years, depending on what his usage rate is and how he's looking and if he's declining. As for Gallup, we don't know where he's going to be post-ACL injury. So, here's how it can go. One scenario could involve the Cowboys move on from Brandon Cooks after 2 years, and Joshua Downs takes the reins as wide receiver 2 or 3. The same could be said for Gallup. Let's say Gallup runs into a situation where he's hurt and he can't come back to what he once was. You have Downs to pick up the load, and then eventually you can offload Gallup's contract, and then you can just draft another dude alongside that. And that would be a very weird thing, because then we're having the revisiting of the conversations of what they did with Amari Cooper, and we're not going to harp on that for a whole long time. But you would need a lot to happen for the Cowboys to take a wide receiver, but it's still a possibility, right? We don't know what's going to happen on draft day. And at the end of the day, it's going to be an anomalous situation, regardless of how you look at it. I don't think the Cowboys would take a receiver, knowing how traditionally the board has fallen in these mock drafts. But anything is possible, and we need to gear ourselves up for it. So this would be that anomaly pick of they take a receiver because no one else that they like is there. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to pick 58 and see what the Cowboys do there.
the Dallas Cowboys select
Joe Tippmann, center, Wisconsin. Now, similar to the conversations we've had about Steve Avila, Juice Scruggs, and now Joe Tippmann, they all have the same thing. Guard center flexibility that the Cowboys love. And the thing is that Tippmann is more of a center than he is a guard. Now, he comes from that Wisconsin program that the Cowboys love to go to, especially for offensive linemen. We've seen that with Travis Frederick. We've seen that with Tyler Biotish, center prospects. And it just makes sense. At the end of the day, you get a guy that is a damn good player, and this is really the big thing. What is your plan with Tyler Biotish? Do you want to pay him? If you don't, you have Joe Tippmann to be your center moving forward. However, he can play guard for you. Now, if I'm being completely honest with you, he's not going to be your guard moving forward. I just don't think he's going to translate well to guard at the NFL level. Not like Juice Scruggs, for example. I think Juice Scruggs would be more of a guard rather than a center, and vice versa for Joe Tippmann. But, I mean, the dude is massive. 6'6", 313 pounds. You know, you're getting a guy that's going to be plugged into that offensive line, and he's going to be a behemoth in there. But really, a couple things bother me. The mechanics that he has, I think that he needs to work on that. Sometimes he struggles with being flexible and that leverage when it comes to playing in the interior. That can bother him a couple times. But I always say that that's stuff that you can work on. It's just a matter of how well you do it at the NFL level. But a lot of people project him to be a starting center in the league, and people are like, oh, we could move Biotish to left guard. No, we're not doing that. I would say that if Tippmann wants to be a fit here in Dallas, he's your guard and possibly your center of the future. But, what does that mean for your guard spot? Because if Tippmann ends up being your center long term, then sure, you got a cheaper guy that can do the same thing, but moving forward. But I think that's where the Cowboys need to figure that out. If they go with Tippmann here, they're probably going to plug him in at guard, and they'll just move forward from there. And if Tyler Biotish gets hurt, you're probably plugging him in at center. But, in terms of if the Cowboys really like Tippmann, I have not heard a lot about that because they really talked about other prospects. But something that you want to keep an eye out on, because I know that they didn't meet with him with a 30-day visit, but I do know that they have had conversations about him. So with that being said, let's move on finally to pick 90 in this particular mock draft.
The Dallas Cowboys select
Tyreek Stevenson, cornerback, Miami. Now, the Cowboys definitely need to add another cornerback into this room. Yes, they did add Stephon Gilmore, but that doesn't change anything, right? You look at Trevon Diggs. You have Stephon Gilmore. You have Deron Bland. You can throw in Izzy if you want to in that conversation, but who do you have outside of that? Also, Gilmore only has 1 year on his contract, and then he's gone. So if the Cowboys think he has a lot left in the tank and they want to repay him, that's fine. But if it's just a one and done situation, you're going to need that insurance just in case, especially if things go sour. And I think Stevenson would be a fantastic player for the Cowboys in this particular spot at 90. In fact, this is great value for a guy of his caliber. So a couple things I like in what I've seen from him at Miami when I took the time to research him. Well, he does have a work ethic to where he has developed very well during his time at Miami. He does have a fantastic demeanor when it comes to playing on the football field, what you want in a defense like Dan Quinn's trying to build here. And he has the specs of what you would want in a Dan Quinn cornerback, 6 foot, 198 pounds, you name it. But there are a couple things you can work on. I have noticed that when it comes to open field tackling, he sometimes struggles there, and that's something he can work on, be more consistent with. Another thing is his hip motion and, being able to handle things in space. He can work on a little bit more, but I think that you have a guy where if he is able to take the reins and run with it, he could definitely be a solid starter in this league. But one of the biggest things is that he probably needs some time to develop, and I think Dallas would be a perfect spot for him in this instance. He's not going to be required day one to be an instantaneous starter, but if he's given time, I think that he can develop into one. So that's something I would keep an eye out on because the Cowboys really like him in this draft process, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being the pick at 90 or in, the later rounds. But that looks like what's going to wrap up this particular draft, guys. So what do you guys think? Tell me down below your thoughts on this draft. And with that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and you stay safe. Goodbye.